That brings us on to Father Sean McDonagh. And Father Sean McDonagh, you've written a lot about the injustice of the current ecological crisis, which Phil has reminded us of. But you've also called into question the idea that we're not the only inhabitants of Earth. There are other species out there. And you've argued that one of our problems is that our perspective is very anthropocentric, big jawbreaker of a word. So I was wondering if you might just explain to us a little bit what you mean by that term.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much for inviting me to this conference. It's very insightful, and it's great to see so many people here who have been working in these areas and may give a focus to us in the future. Basically, I'm talking about the fact that because of climate change, we're living in the 6th largest extinction of species since life began. We know an extraordinary miracle took place 3.8 billion years ago. Life happened on Earth. In the course of the history of life on Earth, there's been 4 other extinction periods before the 165 million years ago. An asteroid crashed into the Earth where Yucatan is today and created such problems that photosynthesis was interfered with and large species like the dinosaur became extinct. Every one of the other 4 extinctions happened for natural or reasons coming out from outside the globe. This one has been caused by human beings. In 2004, Chris Thomas of the University of Leeds in Britain, he wrote an article in Nature saying, in the next 50 years, at least 1 million species will be extincted through climate change. The reason, of course, is the habitat changes. And the species cannot change fast enough through evolution, and therefore they go extinct. The poster one, of course, is the polar bear. As the ice melts in the Arctic, the polar bear is not able to feed, and basically they become extinct. But it's not just the polar bear. For example, a 1 meter rise in sea levels will do enormous damage to mudflats, etc. The acidification of the oceans, for example, has a huge impact, for example, on crustaceans, on mollusks. And again, many of the poor people of the world, these are the foods that they eat. Myself, I came to understand the ecological issue because I lived in a rainforest. A 4-degree rise in temperature would turn the Amazon, with its extraordinary rich species, into a savanna land in about 100 years. That's an extraordinary change. What about bird life? Probably 1/3 of the birds of the world are facing extinction. In some places, it's up to 90%, particularly with birds, migratory birds. The fish of the world are also. We cannot take it for granted that that extraordinary image of Ireland, the salmon of the Boyne, that the salmon will continue to come back to our rivers when they're feeding, and the sand eels have moved up 100 or 200 miles up north from us. So the melting of the glaciers on the Himalayas will have an enormous, devastating impact on all of Southeast Asia and even on China, because the Yangtze River comes from there. Think about turning that into a wadi, all of those rivers, in a period of 50 years. So I don't need to continue. A lot of the stuff is in a book I wrote a few years ago, The Debt of Life, The Horror of Extinction. It's an enormous change. If I brought you and we flew across to China in the year 800, and I put you down in Xi'an, the capital of the Tang Dynasty, you would say, I don't know where I am, and I don't know what to do. The change that's taking place now is a geological order of magnitude. People are now using, since the end of the Ice Age, the Holocene period was very, very important because temperatures and climate were stable. As we heard time and time again from the speakers this morning, you can't have agriculture if you don't know when to plant and you don't know when to reap. So we're moving from this Holocene into the Anthropocene. Anthropos is the Greek word for human. And so that level of change, in the history of the planet on Earth, it often took 20 million years. The Lower Carboniferous period from 320 million years ago to 300 was 20 million years. The Cretaceous period was almost 60 million. We are bringing about this change of order of magnitude in less than 100 years. and will affect every single ecosystem on the planet, and it is irreversible. So, what does it mean for us? Well, for us it means we are one of the species on the planet. Our philosophy and theology didn't do us a great service in saying we are cut off completely, the Platonic world, that there's a chasm between humans and the rest of creation. Biology tells us very richly in the last 150 years, we're part of creation. We share 72% common DNA with mice and rats. We're part of everything. We don't have chlorophyll in our ears. We can't take the energy from the sun, like green matter, and transform it into energy to eat. So we depend on the planet for our food. And if we're losing 1/6 of the food sources, we depend on the planet for our medicine. The great biologist Edward Wilson of Harvard is basically, there's a race on, and I saw it in Lake Cebu where I lived, between scientists trying to find out what the structures of these plants are, or other creatures, and them becoming extinct. So in a sense, we're doing enormous damage to ourselves. But it's not just that. My great teacher, Thomas Berry, used to say to me, if you lived on the moon, your imagination would be as dry as the moon. There'd be no world of enrichment. Our imaginations are so enriched because of the beauty of the world around us. So if the world around us huge segments become extinct, that will be extraordinarily destructive for human creativity, which is absolutely necessary at a time like this. But it even gets worse. This kind of extinction actually compromises our ability to know and experience God. And who do I have behind me on that claim? It's a man called Thomas Aquinas. I'll read a few because it's in the encyclical and I think it's very good. He said, hence we must say that the distinction and multitude of things to come from the intention of the first agent, that's God. For he brought many things into being in order that his goodness might be communicated to creatures and, listen to it, represented by them. Because his goodness could not be adequately represented by one creature alone, he produced many and diverse creatures. So what was wanting to one in the manifestation of the divine goodness might be supplied by another. For goodness, which in God is simple and uniform, in creatures is manifold and divided. And hence, and this is the punch, the whole universe together participates in the divine goodness more perfectly and represents it better than any species whatsoever, and that includes humans. So, extinction of species is a catastrophe for humans on Earth. We have to look at ourselves, though, because we talk about science changing, our religion has also to change. There's no difficulty with the Hebrew Scriptures, the first lines of the Scriptures, particularly in chapter 1. But there is a difficulty with chapter 1, 26 to 28. The Pope says, of course, he says that increase and multiply and conquer the earth. The Pope says, well, the interpretation of that is, you be good to the earth. Well, the reality is, it's not. If you read, biologists, or if you read historians, for example, who have talked about this, for example, Keith Thomas's Man and the Natural World, he basically says from the Tudor period on, the people who were changing the world, particularly with modern technology after 1750, they justified what they were doing by reference to Genesis chapter 1. And so we have to be very careful with that. And then we come back to this is a very quick few minutes.
Yeah, you've only 1 minute left. Yeah.
If I've only 1 minute, I'll go to my theologian of creation, and he's a good man. Green, blue, yellow and red. God is down in the swamps and marshes, sensational as April and almost incredible, the flowering of our catharsis. A humble scene in a backward place where no one important ever looked. The raving flower looked up into the face of the one and the endless, the mind that balked the profoundest of mortals. A primrose, a violet wild iris, but mostly anonymous performers, yet an important occasion as the muse at her toilet prepared to inform the local farmers that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful God was breathing his love. That's my God. That's the God I engage. And anyone who asks me to engage with another God, I am a profound atheist. Thank you.